Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again, and this video it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to have a pretty serious conversation here to start with, revolving, what is this even all about? The reason why I'm even making these videos, the reason why I'm making this website that I'm making. Look, I've been watching Ben Davidson for almost 10 years now. So I've been an observer since about 2017. And mind you, it took me about 5 of those years to actually get my ass in gear. But look, I've been down all sorts of other rabbit holes, tons of them. Nibiru, simulation theories, flat Earth, you name it. And, a lot of conspiracies are coming true, but I don't see this as a conspiracy, because it isn't. What Ben is doing is a scientific theory. And so far, it seems like pretty much every single part of evidence has been coming true. And that's why I take it seriously. With all the time that I've been watching this, there have been plenty of times for something to come up, something to stray me in the wrong direction. And that simply hasn't happened after all this time. Because Ben brings the science, and it relates to every field of science imaginable. It relates to myths and religions, and it relates to everything that we see going on in the mainstream, in clown world, in the decision-making of our own governments and people in power. Really, it comes from everything. So, okay, let's just say he's wrong. Okay, let's just say, just in case he's wrong, what has this actually been doing for me? Well, it's been doing a lot of things. Alright, I question everything now. Alright, not just his stuff, I question everything. It's given me a lot of critical thinking and critical reasoning that plays into day-to-day life. Alright, and the whole thing here, right? The main goals by paying attention to this, of being an observer, is number one, being less reliant on the government. I mean, it doesn't matter what the situation is, that's not a bad thing. We need to be less dependent on the government, because that's exactly what they want. They want us all to be a bunch of basically slaves. They want us to be dependent on the system so that if anything happens, or if they want us to do anything, they can easily coerce that. Okay, number two, forming strong community bonds with other like-minded people. That's a huge one. That's what humans have been doing for thousands of years, is living in tribes, living in communities, living with close-knit bonds between people that you know, families, etc. So, okay, that's not a bad thing, no matter what happens. So then we got prepping for every possible scenario. So again, that just loops back, and it's like, no matter what happens, we're preparing for every possible situation. That's not a bad thing. There's all sorts of things that can happen, even without these theories in place. Okay. So, another thing is I've taken a lot more self-ownership of my own actions, my habits, my lifestyle, my thoughts, everything. I've taken so much more self-ownership over what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. Whether I'm working some crappy job or I'm trying to do what I want to do, it's really helped me on a personal level, just living my best life, no matter what happens. So that's not a bad thing. And even further, I've found very deep purpose in life. And, there seems to be a kind of common thing with a lot of observers, including Ben himself, where, a lot of us seem to have kind of felt these things long before we ever encountered the evidence for what is potentially happening, what is very much happening on this planet, this grandiose perspective of everything. Many of us have kind of felt this, like, deep in our bones, and even some of us have had, visions, dreams, etc. So I guess in that way, a lot of observers were kind of born to be observers. But honestly, the world becomes a lot less dark and depressing with this kind of perspective. And with the 6 and 12,000 year cycles, humans and life on Earth have survived these catastrophic events for as long as time itself. So, once you get over that initial hump of fear or whatever people feel all sorts of things when they look at Ben's content. And, I'm not even talking about like some of the other things Ben says, just when it comes to the science, when it comes to the archaeological history, that line of evidence, the whole deal. It's like once you get over that initial bit of resistance, it's like, oh, this is actually an amazing perspective to have when you start to take action and when you believe that it's not just about waiting for something bad to happen. This is about taking steps in the right direction, okay? And I think this is very much the reason why my generation, Gen Z, is in so much trouble, is why we've been basically destroyed with distractions, with BS, with this or that, the education system, all of it. I think that's why these newer generations are being targeted so hard for, LGBT, for just all these honestly really sick things that are happening in the world and in our society. That's why our society is breaking down. It's on purpose. It's because Gen Z, especially, I believe at least, all right, this is just coming from me, I think we're the most crucial generation on this timeline. What is that timeline? Well, late 2030s to 2040s. That is the timeline described by Ben Davidson. Even with accelerations in the magnetic field weakening, accelerations with the pole shift moving, I mean, that's right here. Like, you can just see it. And you can't, you don't have to just take the NOAA's word for it. Like, this is what's really happening. All right. 1590, it was up here, by Canada. And it was kind of floating around there. It was moving, but it was kind of floating around there. And then you get to 1900. And it's moved. All right. And then you go 100 years later. Just 100 years later, 2000. It's way up here. And then look, just in the last 25 years. I mean, dude. I'm not even really here to particularly convince anyone, even with everything that I'm doing over here on Frontier Signals. Okay, Ben has a large following, and I don't think I'm going to have as large of a following even in 5 years from now, probably. And that's fine, okay? But, if I can lay down some breadcrumbs and kind of put together the science in a neutral framework, in a collective, collaborative way. Because look, you go to here, the resource links, we have other theorists, we have other scientists over here, all right? We got Ethical Skeptic, Craig Stone, Junho, Zacharias, and there's going to be many more. Again, this isn't something that you have to just take one person's word for it. You just have to do your own research. And that phrase right there pisses a lot of people off, whether you're talking about COVID, whether you're talking about, the climate change narrative. People take offense to that when you tell them to go do their own research. And it's funny. It's just something to laugh at this point. Because you're doing an incredible disservice to yourself and the rest of humanity, for that matter, by not doing so. So, anyways, that's enough of that ramble. For today's update, there's not really a whole lot here. There is, kind of, but there's not really. So, we're in a G2 magnetic storm. We've had that going on over just a simple coronal hole, mind you. So again, the weakening of the magnetic field has a part of this here. The auroras seen at mid-latitudes in the last couple years has to do with this. The evidence is everywhere. You just have to, like, peel back all the years of programming and everything. And that takes me back to what I said earlier. It took me about 5 years of watching Ben consistently as a Gen Z person until I really, really started to take action. And part of that was due to all the programming, all the nonsense that we grow up with. And the other part of that was, just, I guess, becoming old enough as well, getting a job for a number of years, a couple of jobs, each for a number of years, and trying to just survive, really. Most of that time was just surviving and getting a plan together, essentially. But, none of this happens overnight. But we're getting to a crucial point where, if people don't wake up, people won't. And, it's kind of like a call to action here. And it's like, not only is it empowering and it's important, but again, people have been through this. Humanity has been through this before. Advanced civilizations in the past, governments and powers of corruption. Regular people aren't the only ones that have survived this. Evil and corruption has also survived this. And that's why we keep going through this same loop of these power struggles and slavery and deception. And I think it's about time to break that cycle. So, if you go over here to Geoscore, and, this is just an example because, look, California's screwed regardless. There's a million things going against these locations. But, just type in your city, your town, your state, your country into Geoscore. And if that score is low, less than 2,000, I would say, look, you don't really have a chance. And, it's location. And again, it's about surviving any potential outcome, becoming, sovereign as a person, as a community. So, once you start forming these communities and once you start doing the work, then it almost doesn't matter what happens because you're prepared for everything. So again, there's not really any downside to believing these things. Anyways, I'm still rambling about that because I just feel like it's important to talk about. I can sit here and I can make these basic updates, but that's not what it's about for me. Pretty much everything that I've done, especially creatively, whether it's been dabbling in music, making, space art, and my other videos, it's mostly a tool for reflection and expression. That's like the baseline foundation for doing anything. I go back to some of my old videos. I go back and listen to some of the music I've created. And, it's like a tool for reflection. And nothing's going to be the same. I'm never going to have the same format. If I wanted to just make these updates every single day and cover the same exact things, I could. But again, that's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. And this is kind of like one of those checkpoints for me in just kind of reviewing my intention and my goals. Speaking of goals, in this community over on Solar Killshot, I've met some wonderful people and have joined a routine group for almost 200 days now, where we check in with each other, we set our goals. Don't mind that, I meant to mute that, but it's fine. Setting goals, checking in with other people, getting help, helping each other. And that's been another bonus that I've gotten out of this whole thing. It has totally sped up the whole process of self-development and everything related to anything. So anyways, I should probably mute that. Alright. So is there anything else that's happened in the last 24 hours that has been significant? Well, I mean, we have, Kamchatka has been really going off again. So we go up here and take a look at the seismic activity as well. And we've had a 5 in between these two previous zones of activity. The usual deep earthquakes going on, so on and so forth. A couple of earthquakes down here by Italy again. So we have 2.9 and a 3.7 down here. So a little bit of activity going on there. And, the rest of it is just kind of filling out. So again, these arrows, I don't really care what anyone has to say about Dutch Sense. These arrows are good. They really do triangulate the pressure and give us an idea of where seismic pressure goes. And this happens all the time. We've got activity down here, right at these X's, right where pressure transfers. It goes across the Pacific. It makes its way around the planet. So, we got that, letter X right there, boom, earthquake. Letter X right there, boom, earthquake. So, people can say what they want, but they're not going to budge my stance, and I'll always be evolving, always be questioning things like I always have been. I question a lot of what Dutch Sense says as well, but, those two, along with Jimmy Corsetti and Bright Insight, those have been really what I call the trio of just blowing your mind on possibilities and frontier science capabilities. So, either way, it's pretty groundbreaking stuff all across the board to take a look at and, decipher for yourself. So, anyways, I think that's going to do it for today's little update here. More of a ramble, but felt like an important one to make. So that's why this one's coming out a little bit later. I felt like this was just what I needed to say, so I said it. So anyways, hope y'all enjoyed this one. Please like and subscribe for more. Share this video if you dare. And I will catch you all in the next.